Hello and welcome to the Legal Lab podcast with myself, Pancho, and today we have a very dynamic guest and I'm so excited to welcome him here today. That is Paul Wright, the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Quartz Chambers. He's going to be talking to me about Barrister Link, which is his baby, which is a fantastic, innovative project, also part of the Chambers, and also Quartz Chambers. So welcome, Paul Wright.
Thank you, Haresh. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Pancho.
So first of all, what I want to ask you is, what makes Quartz Chambers different?
Okay, so 10 years ago, I decided that in a traditional chambers, as a senior clerk, I thought that there would be something better to look at in a more innovative way, and very much around direct access. And again, how technology was evolving and really just making it easier to access barristers, but trying to make more of the opportunity and awareness for clients, how they can find and connect. And we've been doing that ever since, really. And Quartz was that model, but to be agile and to have barristers that were innovative, that thought outside the box as far as how they wanted to work, and that's how we grew the barristers, a national chambers, but very much virtual and online.
What I'm really excited to hear about in a moment is about Barrister Link. I've called it your baby, I've called it a project, but I know it's an actual company and it's also a big part of Quartz, isn't it?
There's two different entities. So the only thing that links the two is me, but the journey for coming out of a traditional chambers and building Quartz. Quartz is the human MVP, minimum viable product, if you're not too familiar with the kind of tech side of things, to then test what a tech platform could be. So we have the barristers that are all over the country, work remotely, work with us, some work with other chambers, some work on their own and sole practitioners. That worked in the Chambers environment that we built within Quartz. Barrister Link is then a tech version of that. But barristers at Quartz are on the platform, but it's not a company that's owned by Quartz. And Barrister Link is never going to be a large chambers that is part of Quartz. It's a tech platform, a network of individuals, barristers, chambers, where clerks can manage and deal with their onboarding, and mainly for direct access. And again, for the direct access clients, it's somewhere they can find, book, pay and work with barristers in minutes that's secure.
Now, you and I are both passionate about direct access, which is probably why we've connected and had such lovely discussions. But I think one thing that I'm really excited to also talk about is the innovative work in terms of the areas of law Quartz offers. Because I know, for example, because being a South Asian person myself, that a lot of people have sought to seek your help in the South Asian community when it comes to family matters, because we, for example, don't talk about prenuptial agreements. And that's really commendable because there's not that many people actually in the country who do that. The other area of law which really fascinates me is the animal law. That's a real exciting area of law, I would call it. A bit like media law, which is like the sexy side of law, which is one of my areas. Tell me about those areas of law.
Yeah, so I mean, again, what everything kind of links back to why we formed and started Quartz, because we had a blank page, and one of the things where we wanted innovative barristers that did different things. Because we were starting from scratch, it wasn't that I needed to follow a certain path as far as the solicitors that would instruct us. So completely new, hence why with direct access as a focus. So we attracted barristers that had an interest certainly in animal law. Andrea Pitt has written a book on dog law, and it's a keen interest for her. We've got other barristers that deal with different things. John Hudson, who was a former solicitor, who's our head of chambers, is finance family, through and through. And as you say, with the South Asian community, there's specialised areas, but I think it's cultural understanding rather than the fact of actually knowing the law is any different. And John's, John's done many, as well as kind of agricultural and other business law and other things as well. And we've got some Southeast Asian barristers in chambers, not doing family finance, but other areas. And it does tend to be, I think, a social demographic of clients that actually seek direct access work because they can see value in it. I think something we've kind of touched upon, those kind of well-educated people that understand I can manage this myself, and it it's interesting how you kind of find that. So yes, I mean it's certainly something that that we can cover, as in with other kind of areas of niche kind of work.
What I love, I have to say, about your chambers is that I'm born and bred in Nottingham, and growing up in Nottingham, there was only a traditional set of chambers which were tucked away in places or parts of Nottingham which are a little bit inaccessible to the public.
Yeah.
And what you've gone and done is broken the whole mold or model or whatever we want to call it, and placed yourself right in the middle of a university setting where parents can see you, students can see you, local shoppers can see you. What you've done effectively, which is what I really love, is you've brought direct access barristers and barristers in general, not so much on the high street, but in a way a version of that, which I think was about time.
Yeah.
I think from my knowledge, you must be the first in the country, because I've spoken to a lot of barristers, I've spoken to a lot of professionals around the country, a lot of solicitors through all the different projects that we do. And I think that's really exciting. What do you feel about that?
I mean, it's always part of the plan. So going back even before Quartz was Quartz, and I worked in a traditional set of chambers, the Legal Service Act 2007 changed the way that we could think about unbundled services and how we could kind of deliver the opportunities. And kind of only, 3 years prior to that was when direct access was allowed to happen. So it wasn't until the 90s that we were able to advertise. So, but that's because we were a referral industry. We are protected in a way by the solicitors being the commercial high street shop front. They would manage the clients, and barristers wouldn't need to. That's hence partly why clerks are there, that introduction there. So it was always an important point of how do we make clients aware. So we even considered, having a shop, in essence, where you could come in like you would with an estate agents. But that was probably, we didn't do it, and it was probably wise that we didn't do it, because it would just been too soon. Even now, 22 years on, not enough people are aware that going to a barrister directly is, one, cost effective, two, easy, and you're real people, And so setting up in the DEC, the Dryden Enterprise Centre, was something that we're amongst academia, we're amongst the enterprise team that are here, students, young kids that are coming through setting up businesses, others that are here with innovative businesses that are here, larger companies as well. So we fitted in with that. So if they need lawyers, we're around. But the students get to see, it's good to have a part in their development when there's shows and events that happen. But the parents as well, when they're coming either to meet their kids or like we do, our kids are at uni, but they're in other cities, going in and spending days or certainly on the open days and whatever. So it was all about being accessible, without being too obvious and trying to be high street. That's not us.
I think the other aspect that's very appealing about Quartz is the fact that you, as in who you earlier said you're the connection between Quartz and Barrister Link, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. But I think your experience of 34 years is actually quite significant, really. And I know you're very humble about it, Paul, but I don't really think there are many senior clerks who've then gone and set up chambers of their own. They've moved around. Yes, I do know that, because obviously we know through the profession, a lot of clerks do move around. They go to another chambers, and then they kind of remain in that role. But what you've done is seen that there are gaps in the market, as you're saying about the legal services, and move forward with that. how does it feel to be somebody who's been so creative and innovative? You're allowed to be a little bit arrogant about this in your answer.
Yeah, okay, very good. The model is a strange model, and unless you're a barrister or a clerk, or you know either one, you're not really going to properly kind of understand how that works with the Chambers environment. A Chambers is an admin central hub for the barristers to collectively work within. So it's a club in essence. And the clerks are an agent, or they're agents to their barristers. So let's go back a couple of 100 years. It was no different, but your senior clerk would be responsible for the admin, for the clerk's room, but they wouldn't be responsible for the business side of stuff. And as things changed probably in the 70s, I think, where more around business structures, the head of Chambers had to take responsibility of that because we were still that club. There wasn't really companies or entities. So it's progressed as years have gone by. And I think even 10 years ago, it was still unique. There'd been others that have set up in ways that they've run, again, part of the 2007 Legal Service Act change. But what's happened is fast-tracked others being able to do it is, I think, post-COVID. And the flexibility and actually the realization that we can be innovative structures but still remain traditional. So yeah, I had some core kind of values of what I wanted. I'd been in the game long enough to know that I was tired of how it once was and I wanted to do it differently. And my wife and children backed me, and we went for it, and that's where Quartz, and it's been successful and reflected in the barristers that are associated with us, but equally the solicitors that instruct us, but definitely the direct access clients. So it's much about we've created something from an idea that was tough in the early days, but it's showing to be worthwhile.
From my perspective, being a barrister, having practiced and met many people, I think your uniqueness, if I can call it that, is the fact that you do have this experience of 34 years, plus also you've mentioned it yourself with the family support. And I think having the family touch to a business always makes a difference. And I think that's very nice. And tell us a little bit about the support from your wife and your children who are also involved in the business.
Yeah, so the decision 10 years ago, I think I'd been a clerk for obviously 24 years, but I'd been a senior clerk for 20. And that was a 4-hour commute every day. And I'm from London originally, my wife's from Kent, but we both live in Nottingham because we love Nottingham. But our kids say grass, not grass, so they're born in Nottingham. But it was like, okay, well, I'm traveling, I'm doing long days, but also I've got that. So I'd have a short window of an hour or two or an hour probably with the kids before they'd go off to sleep, and I'd read them a story, and then I'd go down, have my dinner, and that'd be it, and I'd be off again the next day. And it was like, okay, we need to change the way that we want to do things. And so a big part of the decision was the summer of 16 was to kind of think, right, it's time now to really put into practice what I'd said that could be possible. But that means, we're going to have to, it's going to affect us. It's going to be something. I'm leaving a comfortable job to start from scratch. And, fair play, I think Joseph was 12, Lily was 10, and Jane said, yeah, let's do it. And the kids backed us. So they've stayed all the way through. They've understood bits of it. Their skills now whilst they're at uni, Joseph design, so he designs a lot of the stuff that we're doing in for our kind of marketing things for both Quartz and Barrister Link. Lily's going to be a teacher, but she's very pragmatic and systematic about stuff. So she does a lot of the kind of reach outs on stuff for Barrister Link, for reaching out and connecting with people. So it's very much been a core focus of the success, and that then spreads out to our barristers. I had a conversation today with one of our barristers, who's busy and like rushed around different parts of the country, and though shattered, as it's everything to be a part of the Quartz I say family. It's not, it's not so much about that, but it's integral to what we have and what they feel belonging, and that goes beyond, the family side of that. But James, who's a senior clerk, and all the other barristers as well. So it's a proud thing to have done, but the next 10 years needs to be something beyond what we can even fathom or think of now, I think.
You've moved into a topic which I wanted to cover, which was about education. Your daughter's an educator, and you're placed in the centre of an educational institution. And that takes me to Barrister Link, actually, because I feel that Barrister Link is a great platform, company project, idea, which will educate the public on direct access. And that's what I see it having the goal of as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah,
please?
so it's a simple concept, an idea, much more complicated to have put into place. But it arises out of Quartz and my experience to be able to connect a client to a barrister, or a solicitor to a barrister, and all the bits in between that any clerk will know. But direct access, it's a simple process of find the barrister, connect with the clerk or the barrister, negotiate a quote, agree the terms, pay the bill, because you have to pay up front before the barrister can engage, and upload the papers and the barrister does the work. And we're pretty quick at it in Quartz, half an hour to do that. But you're backwards and forwards, and of course there's that negotiation, and of course there's that way of interacting with your clients. So I thought, well, how can we processize? How can we make it, a little bit more streamlined and frictionless, but also build around the core structure of AA chambers? We're a community. The hub is the clerks room. The barristers are a part of that. The solicitors then become a part of that. Then, if it's now direct access, the clients are a part of that. Our suppliers. So you start to build out an ecosystem, and different chambers all have those same little ecosystems. So why can't you have it bigger? So it became, right, what's the idea? And go back to your education point. Partway through starting Quartz, I was approached to have a stab at doing an MBA.
Okay.
And so that's what I did. So partly in 2020, I think it was 2019, I started my MBA here at NTU.
Wow.
And completed it, I think it was 2023. But a big part of that was strategy. Lots of things I didn't know why I knew what I knew as a clerk, but now it's starting to make sense. And using the focus of Barrister Link is, right, we've got an age-old system, a few hundred years of how it works. How can we make it better without ruining the process, the tradition? And that was the tech. And so literally, it's an Uber for barristers. It's a booking.com. It's a aggregator. You select who you need. What do I need? And most of the things that a client or direct access don't really know what they need. A lot now are more aware because there's more information out there. But if I've got a problem, a legal issue, what is that? Where is it? Is it a hearing? Is it a conference? When is it? And select. And then there's your list and your barristers. And rather, I don't take the view that it should be a race to the bottom where you get selected and given a number of barristers to choose from. This barrister matches. The tech doesn't determine whether it's a male, a female, what colour, where they're from. We're matching. You have a need, and this is the best barrister, or these are the best barristers. You read their profile, you select them. Once you're in, the clerk can then manage, as they would do normally, and negotiate and deal with that. And it's all secure. And it's about the network effect of clients coming in, direct access, barristers or clerks not being able to manage, so they'll put it back into the system where somebody else might pick it up in other chambers. So clients are not left high and dry to try and search constantly. Clerks and barristers are not left to the cases that they can't cover. And then you've got a way that you can, for direct access, pass it back to solicitors. So it was very much about how do we grow that as a system? And so I put it to a few tech companies. Microsoft was one that we worked kind of under for a kind of an accelerator thing that they did. But it was the developer that we've been working with, my co-founder now over the last 4 years, 5 years, that we built Barrister Link, learning on other things that didn't work so well. We were trying to bring in AI and machine learning 6 years ago under some guidance from obviously the Microsoft side, but we had no clue what we were doing. It was automation basically, and a lot of it still is, I think, around the kind of AI question. So it's secure, it works, and it saves time. And then from that you build. But if you've got that network effect of, I can pass cases off to somebody else that solves a problem for that client and for the next barrister because we can't cover it. Quartz Barristers are on Barrister Link, but it's nothing to do with Quartz. It's the barristers that are on there that the clerk manages and sends it through. So any barrister in any chambers, sole practitioners, chambers as a whole, can obviously deal with the direct access inquiries faster and more secure on the platform.
It's all brilliant what you're saying, and I'm a real advocate of direct access and also innovative ways of reaching the audience. So if you can just talk me through Barrister Link. So if I'm a potential client, take me through the steps of what I would have to do.
Sure. So depending on what area of law, so let's say, and it's an employment matter, you would search for what the type of issue is. The website is actually being rebuilt now with kind of a chat agent that would determine what it is. Because if you don't know what you don't know, the terminology you might not be able to select. That's why clients find it difficult searching legal websites, because they don't know what they're looking for immediately. But okay, you know we need an employment matter, whether it's a hearing or whether it's a conference or advice. So you select area of law, employment. Then if it's a hearing or a conference or advice, what's the type of work? Where is it? So if it's a hearing, what court is it in?
Okay.
Then you select the date, then you'd select the time, and then you'd search. And what that does, it's just matching the barristers that would do employment law, that would go to that court, that are available on that date, because we sync to diaries. We don't see the barristers' diaries, but you can sync to know whether you're available or not. Then the client can then choose, well, I like that barrister, I want to book Haresh, so they'll select. Once they select, then they would need to just put in some of their basic information, and to ensure security that there's, that they've got the two-factor and stuff, that they're there. Then they're in the platform themselves. So the client side has the same features as what the barrister or the clerk would see, and we're negotiating in a sense. So you get the offer to negotiate. So that could be with you. If you're a sole practitioner, you manage it. If you're in a chambers and you want your clerks to manage it, your clerks can manage it. So you set up who needs to manage what. At that point, it's a negotiation. So you'll chat and message securely as if you would on WhatsApp, but we're not coming out of the platform onto WhatsApp, or we're not going into emails where there could be risks of, duplication or phishing or cyber, anything like that. Keep it in one system. And then once we agree, we'll send the offer. The offer goes to the client, so the clerk can send the offer, or the barrister could, but it would be the clerk if you're in a chambers where you've elected the clerk, which we've done at Quartz. So the clerk sends the offer. The client either accepts or declines. If they decline, then it's finished. They can send another offer. If the barrister or the clerk declines, then we've got to select a reason why. And that leads into kind of fair allocation reports and things that are part of the BSB requirement. Now, once that's done, your terms and conditions pull over all the information through. So no manual information, because the client's already onboarded with their information. So we know the client's name, we know what we've agreed, we know the fee, and we know the work that's going to be done. That's all in the client care letter. That is then the client either clicks and accepts. Once they do that, their payment link and a fee note or an invoice. Pay that, and it's ready to go. They upload their papers, or they can upload them pre-negotiation if you want to have a look to see before that. but you're good to go. And that can be done in minutes, which does take a little bit of time now. But, you know, the key thing to consider is security. LOX 23 is a certification that is recognised by the ICO for law firms and chambers. And we're an assured solution provider as a tech platform. So, you know, you can be assured that when you're on it, it's secure. And clients can select a number of different barristers. If they're not happy with the response that they get in, they can come back on and check and select for somebody else. So it's very easy.
That's really, really brilliant. So with regards to direct access, one thing I'm absolutely passionate about, and I think this is why I really like your line of thinking, your chambers, your thought process, is educating the public on the fact that they can just come to us directly. And a lot of people just don't know this.
No.
Now, I know the Bar Council have done a number of missions on this. I recall going to Brazil and South Korea with the Bar Council on the international missions they held back in 2016 and 2017.
Yep.
And part of those missions, as you will recall, were to do with promoting direct access. So what they were about mostly were international arbitration, and they were talking to companies out there to come to barristers directly. Now, when I was in Brazil, I ended up talking to a law firm where I was actually placed about bringing work directly to us barristers on an international level, which they knew nothing about. So the appeal is far and wide. But looking at it more locally even, I mean, here in Nottingham, there are so many solicitors firms, and everybody seems to think you have to go to a solicitor when there's a legal problem. And that's not true. And that's not the case. You can come to us directly. How do we tell the public this? How do we educate the public more than we already do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, I think, because of resources. And you've got to have that want. So you think about it, 22 years. And there is, out of, I think, roughly 19,000 barristers, 6,000 are direct access accredited. And, you know, I think, how do we have that? And it's getting out there to talk to people. So, you know, I'm part of the, you know, I go to the Nottingham City Business Club, the oldest club, I think, in the country for kind of business networking. But it's how do you get that message across? It's difficult when it's me, because I am not the lawyer. It's better if you are able to chat to a lawyer, because there'll always be somebody, as I'm sure you know, they come up to you and say, what do you do? And then, I've had this, or I know somebody that has that, and it opens that conversation. So I think first is being approachable. So it's awareness and what we are about, what we do, what we're doing now. And it's education. So it's about, well, can I actually have a barrister that could do some drafting for me on this basis? Or can I have them to do something different? Now, the barristers and the clerks will say, look, if it's not right for a barrister, you need a solicitor and we'll introduce you. So I've always said it's not kind of competition in that regard, because solicitors send work to barristers. It's another approach, but it's how do we sell barristers as the brand when sometimes I think the barristers are not stepping up to do it because they don't feel comfortable with it, or they're too busy in court doing other things. So small, medium enterprise, so SMEs, they're the lifeblood of the economy. Yet in, you know, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, the Legal Service Board report on the future of legal services, and there's been many since, but highlights the fact that small, medium businesses, small, medium enterprises are burying their head in the sand. They don't want to deal with any of the problems that they could be faced, whether it's an employment issue, whether it's a debt issue, whether it's dealing with contractual issues. And it's a cost to them each year of £40 billion, because it's not that they're not the legal cost, but it's the ramifications because they didn't act properly. And so I believe it is something that if you knew you could pick up a phone and speak to a me, I'll put you in touch with a you. And, you know, if somebody calls me now and they need to speak to you tonight, you're probably going to speak to them once we've sorted out how they're going to do that. And they've got to be able to to engage and get that advice. Similarly, how we've gone with Barrister Link, it's that tech version of it, but it's awareness, and it's really talking about it, and it's promoting it, and not being afraid of that snobbery element that direct access is something that we shouldn't do because we should get solicitor work instruction. Well, you should get both. And with those of us now that are doing it, that do it well, and put the customer, the client at the heart of it, it just makes it so much easier and better, and everyone, all round benefits. So
one of the biggest things I get told from my clients is usually that, number one, thank you for saving costs. And number two, you've told me that I could have done a lot of this by myself.
Yeah.
And thirdly, they've realized they don't need two lawyers. Because what I find a lot of times is that solicitors will do their job, and there may come a point, not always, but there may come a point where they say, I think we need to get counsel's opinion, as in a barrister's opinion. And then it comes to you, and that's when then I will say to the client that, did you not think this or did you not think that? And sometimes they were not told that, or they didn't know that, and that's probably because the solicitor at the time didn't know certain facts. I don't know, but the point is that they've realized that they could have come to a different level of advice at a much earlier stage. What then I try and do through my practice is to make sure that people then take that message and tell other people. But you said something earlier about some barristers don't step up themselves. And I think that's also because traditionally, even through the training of barristers, I did the course when it was called the BVC.
Yeah.
And I think before the BVC, it was called something else. The names have changed, haven't they? But then now was it the BPTC? But anyway.
Yeah, it was that.
The training was always done in a way, I suppose, that it promoted the barrister in a certain category. So people some people, not all, have this perception that they are a certain part of that profession. I'm very keen on changing that, and I think a lot of the barristers that you have at Quartz are equally keen on doing that, which I see. Some chambers are doing this, but I think what the biggest problem still is, coming back to what you said, is that some barristers are not directly accessible. They may be direct access, but they're not directly accessible.
No.
Do you see my point?
I do, yeah.
Being direct accessible, being a direct access barrister means you should be accessible directly. But then some of them have so many middle procedures in place which makes them totally inaccessible.
Yeah.
That's the bit I do struggle with. And I just feel that it's a shame in a way, because some barristers really could benefit from.
Yeah. I think, well, it comes, marketing, networking, being that, and it's not that, barristers can't do it. Some feel uneasy, but it doesn't mean just barristers. Some of us feel easier to do that than others. Standing up and talking in an environment where you're talking to, some barristers struggle talking to a room full of, let's say, business people or wedding guests, where they're more than happy to stand up because they're in their court arena, which is in court, and that's where the advocacy and the skills of being able to deliver is second to none. But it suits some people, it doesn't others, and like yourself, you're very social and amiable and being able to kind of speak to people, and that's great. And I think that's where we'll see things develop in the future. Technology will allow us to do that and be more open and more readily available to speak to clients directly. But there is always that opportunity to work with your solicitor, but the other way around. We've, for so many years, have been getting work where solicitors have instructed barristers. Well, it shouldn't really, and it's, I think a lot of the chambers that don't do very much in the way of direct access, they would pass their work back to their solicitors, and it comes back that way. So that works, but it's just different ways in where you can impress upon the client that they've got options, they've got choices, and yeah, you can save significantly. But sometimes a client might want their hand held all the way through, but others times that they're not. But I think it's knowing about it. So I'll always say to a client, they might want things that even I know they're not going to potentially achieve because the budget won't allow that. So we'll say, let's start from the beginning, speak to your barrister, and if you can get in on the early stage, because there's so many horror stories where people have spent tens of thousands and they've not really got anywhere. Your barrister's going to know pretty much what the judge is going to say.
Yeah.
So work back from that.
Yeah.
And you might want these things, but you listen to your barrister to tell you and start from scratch. And it's much better you paying for that advice now and wasting all that money going along down the line, because
totally agree.
You've got to trust your professional expert that's there, and you know, they're the ones that are best placed to give you that advice.
So thank you, Paul. I think you have been an absolute delight. Thank you to have on my podcast, The Legal Lab, and Pancho obviously has really enjoyed it, as you can see, and fallen asleep, which he normally does. And the viewers and the listeners know this. And hopefully we'll have another episode.
Definitely, yeah.
About more discussions to do with barrister life, direct access. And I will see you again. And thank you to Quartz, and thank you to Barrister Link as well. And thank you to all of your team, including the lovely Jane.
Thank you. Thanks, Haresh. No, it's been amazing. And it's like, it's really good, your enthusiasm to be able to put that out there, knowing as a working barrister and what you do with your filming. And of course, having a cool Pancho to kind of just know when it's time to leave and go and have a sleep round the back by his dad.
Pancho is just a delight. So yes. So thank you very much. And we'll join you in the next episode. Bye from me and Pancho and Paul.